That night, the gloomy sky mirrored Nicholas's feelings. A 28-year-old man standing before the dilapidated house he swore he would never return to. The patter of rain on the worn-out roof added to the oppressive atmosphere. A cold gust of wind blew past, carrying the dampness of an impending storm. Nicholas pulled his coat tighter, his eyes fixed on the faded wooden door. His hand gripped an old rusty key, a symbol of a past he had tried to bury for years. Everything seemed unchanged, yet nothing felt the same. The cracks on the walls, the sagging roof, and the shattered window frame evoked memories of days Nicholas desperately wanted to forget. But now, he couldn't ignore them anymore. A letter with shaky handwriting from his mother Marian had forced him back to this place, no matter how much his heart resisted. Memories surged back like a storm. The days when Nicholas was a frail boy living with his mother in a rundown house on the outskirts of town. Marian, a woman with disheveled hair and sorrowful eyes, had once been his entire world. But everything changed after his father died in a work accident. Marian was no longer the gentle mother he once knew. She spiraled into alcoholism, consumed by a grief she couldn't escape, channeling all her anger and despair onto her young son. The daily barrage of shouting, hurtful words, and occasional slaps became a bitter reality for Nicholas. Cold meals in a cluttered kitchen, sleepless nights curled up under a torn blanket, and the icy look in his mother's eyes whenever she saw him. All of it cut into the tender heart of a child like the sharpest blade. He remembered vividly the day he received an award for academic excellence. At just 10 years old, young Nicholas had eagerly waited for his mother at the school's award ceremony, hoping she would show up and say, "I'm proud of you." But she didn't. Nicholas walked onto the stage alone, scanning the crowd only to realize no one had come for him. When he brought the certificate home and handed it to his mother, all he received in return was a cold stare and a bitter remark. "Do you think this piece of paper will change your life?" That memory haunted Nicholas for years. It became a smoldering fire inside him, both burning him and fueling his determination to leave this place and build a new life. He swore he would never come back, never let the past drag him down again. Yet now, here he was, standing before the faded wooden door, not because he wanted to, but because of a letter. Marian, after years of silence, had sent him a message with trembling words. "Nicholas, I need you." Those simple words jolted him back to reality. The air felt heavier. He knew that stepping through that door meant confronting all the pain, the unanswered questions, and the woman he had tried so hard to forget. But deep down, he also understood that this might be his only chance to find closure, or at least to end this painful chapter in his life. Nicholas took a deep breath, his trembling hands fitting the key into the rusty lock. The sound of the lock clicking open echoed in the quiet of the night, signaling not just the opening of a wooden door, but also the unlocking of his past, his memories, and the truths he had never truly understood. Nicholas stepped into the old house, the place that once was his home, but now was merely a shadow of painful memories. The musty smell hit his nose, making him grimace. The dim light of an oil lamp barely illuminated the frail figure of Marian, his mother. She sat on an old chair, her thin hands resting on her lap, trembling. When she saw Nicholas, tears rolled down her wrinkled face. "You came," she choked out, her voice raspy with age and the weight of her burdens. "I couldn't have asked for more." Nicholas stood still, his hands clenched tightly at his sides. His heart felt like stone, unable to find the words to respond. Years of pain had built an impenetrable wall between him and the woman before him. Marian lowered her head slightly, her voice slow and filled with regret. "Nicholas, I know I've been a terrible mother. But did you know that when you were born, the doctor told me you had a congenital heart defect?" Nicholas froze. He had never heard this before. His face darkened, his eyes scrutinizing the woman before him. Marian continued, her voice shaking. "The doctor said you needed a special surgery, but it was so expensive. I had to sell everything I could, even my pride, to save you." Nicholas sighed deeply, his voice cold. "What about the alcohol? You chose it over me." Marian lifted her gaze, her tear-streaked eyes meeting his. "I didn't choose alcohol," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I chose your life. Every time I saw you in pain, I couldn't bear it. I drank to forget my helplessness, to avoid facing the truth, that I had failed as a mother. Her words left Nicholas stunned. For a brief moment, he saw a different Marian. Not the bitter, cold woman he had grown up with, but a broken person drowning under the weight of life's struggles. He remembered the days when Marian stayed up all night by his hospital bed, the simple meals she prepared when he was discharged. But then, the darker memories surged, the shouting, the cruel words, and the tears he had buried deep inside himself for so many years. "I need time," Nicholas said softly but firmly. He turned away, leaving Marian sitting silently in her old chair, a shadow of the past. Over the next few days, Nicholas decided to stay at the old house. He wasn't entirely sure why. Perhaps part of him wanted answers, or maybe he was simply tired of running. The dilapidated house still bore the scars of the past, stains on the walls, dusty furniture, and dark corners untouched by light. Every corner seemed to tell a story, and Nicholas could no longer ignore them. At first, he busied himself with small tasks. He patched the holes in the leaking roof, cleaned up the kitchen, littered with trash and broken pieces, and gradually started organizing the scattered remnants of their old life. In a forgotten drawer, he found a small box. Inside were old photographs, a few letters, and a tiny silver necklace, a gift Marian had given him on his 6th birthday. The necklace made his heart ache. It was the last time he remembered Marian being a kind and loving mother. During those days, Marian began to share the truths she had kept hidden for years. She spoke of sleepless nights by his hospital bed, the humiliation of begging strangers for help, the shame of not being able to pay medical bills on time, and the times she broke down because she didn't know what else to do. "You were never a burden to me," she said, her voice trembling. "You were everything I had, but I didn't know how to love you the right way. I failed you, Nicholas, and I regret it every day." Nicholas listened quietly. Part of him wanted to forgive her, but another part was too deeply scarred to do so easily. He looked at Marian, the frail, broken woman before him, and felt a faint sense of empathy. She wasn't a bad person, he realized. She was just someone beaten down by life, surviving the only way she knew how. One evening, Nicholas stepped out onto the porch, where Marian sat silently staring at the garden in front of the house. A cool breeze carried the scent of wild grass and damp earth after an afternoon rain. He sat down beside her, the two of them silent for a long while. "I know I hurt you," Marian said finally, her voice heavy with emotion. "But I hope you can forgive me, not because I deserve it, but because I want you to find peace." Nicholas looked at his mother. Her eyes, once cold and bitter, were now filled with regret and love. For the first time, he saw not just his mother, but a human being who had made mistakes and suffered greatly for them. He reached for her hand, holding it for the first time in years. "I forgive you," he said softly, but with conviction, "and I forgive myself too." In the days that followed, Nicholas and Marian began rebuilding their relationship, piece by piece. It wasn't perfect, and there were no miracles to erase the past, but there was understanding and effort. They worked together to clean up the house, replanted a few trees in the overgrown garden, and cooked simple meals that felt meaningful. Marian, though frail, found a bit of strength in Nicholas's presence. And for Nicholas, it was the first time in years that he felt he no longer needed to run. Their conversations grew deeper. Marian shared stories about Nicholas's childhood that he had forgotten or never knew. She spoke of the joy she felt the first time he smiled, the hope she held onto during his surgeries, and the heartbreak of knowing she had pushed him away. Nicholas, in turn, began to share his own fears, doubts, and moments of loneliness. For the first time, they both began to see each other clearly. One afternoon, as they sat together in the garden, Marian handed Nicholas a photograph of him as a child, standing beside her and his father. "I thought I lost this," he murmured, staring at the image. Marian smiled faintly. "I kept it all these years. I didn't deserve to hold on to it, but I couldn't let it go." Nicholas looked at his mother, and for the first time, he felt something other than resentment. He felt gratitude for her sacrifices, her efforts, and even her mistakes, which had shaped him into the man he was today. Their story didn't end with perfection, but with acceptance. The past couldn't be changed, but the present and the future were in their hands. Together, they found a way to move forward, one small step at a time. Nicholas realized that forgiveness wasn't just for Marian, it was also for himself. Letting go of the pain allowed him to embrace a new chapter of understanding, compassion, and love. And Marian, though burdened by years of regret, found solace in knowing she had been given a second chance to make things right. In the quiet of the garden, as the sun set and the breeze whispered through the trees, mother and son sat side by side, finally at peace. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low on the horizon, Nicholas sat next to Marian on the old wooden bench in the front yard. The golden light of the setting sun bathed everything in a warm glow, and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees, bringing with it a rare sense of tranquility. The world around them seemed to pause, as if giving mother and son a moment of peace they hadn't experienced in years. Marian broke the silence, her voice trembling but sincere. "I know I've hurt you deeply," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. "But I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Not because I deserve it, but because I want you to be free of the weight I've placed on you." Nicholas turned to look at her, his heart heavy, but no longer filled with anger. Marian's eyes, once so cold and distant, were now softened with regret and love. In them he saw not only a mother who had made mistakes, but also a woman who had carried immense pain and had been broken by life's trials. For a long moment he said nothing, letting her words sink in. Then, for the first time in many years, Nicholas reached out and took her hand in his. It was a small gesture, but it carried a profound meaning, one of reconciliation, healing, and understanding. "I forgive you," Nicholas said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "And I forgive myself too." Marian's tears spilled over, but this time they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of relief and gratitude. She squeezed Nicholas's hand tightly, her frail fingers trembling in his grasp. The unspoken pain that had lingered between them for so long began to dissolve. It wasn't gone entirely, but for the first time, there was hope. Over the next hour, they talked about the past, about moments they remembered differently, moments they had avoided discussing for years. Marian spoke of her deepest regrets, and Nicholas shared the pain he had buried inside. Each word, each confession, was a step toward mending their fractured bond. As the sun finally disappeared behind the horizon, leaving a soft orange glow in its wake, Marian turned to Nicholas one last time. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving me another chance, for giving us another chance." Nicholas nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "We're not perfect, Mom," he replied, "but we still have time to make things better." The story of Nicholas and Marian is a powerful reminder that no one is perfect. We all make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes inflict deep wounds on ourselves and others. But forgiveness is not just a gift for the person who wronged us. It is a priceless gift we give ourselves. It is the act of letting go of the past to make space for healing, growth, and peace. If this story has touched your heart, consider sharing it to spread the message of forgiveness and love. And don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories 365 for more meaningful stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us of the beauty of compassion. Every story is a journey, and we look forward to walking alongside you as we all seek peace, happiness, and understanding.